What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are First. Welcome into another edition of the NFL Weekly here on the network. We break down everything that the NFL has to offer, and with great news, folks, that the band is back together, if you will. I got my two amigos here to fill out this three-team tripod, if you will, for the NFL Weekly. We'll introduce first Coach Brandon Lupian. You can find Coach at Portland 76er. Coach Lupian, how you doing tonight, sir?
Doing well. It's good to be back and seeing some friendly faces in the mix. And I'm looking forward to this show and weeks ahead, you know, now that we're getting closer and closer to the season coming up.
Exactly. Yeah, we're getting into the getting away from the kind of, I guess, if you could call it the dry season. You know, you watch those nature shows and during the drought, you know, you got to kind of struggle for nutrients and things like that. So that's where we are right now. But very soon we will be getting the torrential downpour that is the NFL. And then, of course, we have to introduce our other co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Raider Jim at Raider Jim 1090. Mr. Martinez, how you doing today, sir?
Always good when the sun's out and I'm in San Diego and I'm talking NFL football with you fine gentlemen. How's everybody doing today?
Good stuff. Yeah, it's nice, especially, you know, we're in that kind of early part of summer where it's warm, it's nice. We're actually able to kind of maybe go do a couple more things that they weren't able to do last year. I think August, September, that's when we're looking around going, man, it's 100 again today. But for right now, enjoying the 85, 90 degree weather. Hopefully you are where you are as well. Let's dive right into really maybe the biggest news maybe of the offseason, at least in terms of things that have happened off the field. You know, we're definitely probably one of the last places that you've heard of this, or at least in terms of breaking news. We're not breaking news, but it is Ryan Nassib pretty much coming out as the first active NFL player to announce he is gay, which is great news, really, I think, for society as a whole. Obviously, we had the Michael Sam situation. That's a little different in terms of he announced before, you know, he came into the league. This is a situation where an active NFL player, established NFL player, has announced this. I think it is pretty naive to think that he is the first and only ever to come out. Yes. But in terms of the league, I don't think it's anywhere near the first one that we've had in the league. But obviously, great job for him. Very brave. I can't even believe or can't even begin to imagine what he went through to get to this decision. But we'll start with you, Raider Jim. What are your thoughts on the situation?
You know, I'd like to believe that in this day and age, and especially the topic at hand, it is news, it's monumental news, and it takes a tremendous amount of courage in any arena to come out with an announcement like this, let alone in the NFL. And you would like to think that what it's going to do, if nothing else, the first and foremost, it is going to tighten the camaraderie of his teammates. They are going to have his back. They are going to support him. And as I say that, I also know the reality of things, and that is, right before we went on, I caught a blurb on CNN where they're unfortunately having to talk about the rise of hatred being expressed towards Jewish people and Asian Americans and the Japanese. And we're talking stateside. So as much as I'd like to think that there won't be a bunch of idiots in the stands holding up signs or guys on the other, I don't think it's going to be from the opposing team. I really want to believe that there's more character in the NFL than that, but who's to say? But the impact of this, for him to be able to do this, big pat on the back, and just, you know, good for him. I have known many classmates, coworkers, neighbors, friends in the gay community for several years. And it's always been so, you know, they can joke about it at times when it's just a close group of friends, but talking to them one-on-one, I know it's also very difficult for them to establish that level of comfort and be able to walk and hold their heads high. So again, good for him. Good for him.
Definitely. And I got to correct myself. It's Carl Nassib, not Ryan Nassib. I believe that's his brother who played at Syracuse. But yeah, Carl is who we are referring to here. Coach Lupian, what are your thoughts on the situation?
You know, my sentiments exactly on what Raider Jim said. You know, you can't say it any better. Today's day and age is a lot more understanding than generations in years past. And I'm sure there's been generational talents and professionals alike that have had a hard time, whether it's coming out or expressing themselves or just, you know, playing a long career in this this sport that you gotta have an edge, and any loss of an edge that could be exposed, and not so nowadays. And I don't want to say that that nowadays. I think nowadays people are more open versus skeptics or prejudiced, you know, in regards to that specific lifestyle. Good for him. Good for the community. Good for the Raiders. Good for the NFL. You know, as we start to see. I don't know. I was listening to the radio this morning, and we start to see the likes of a woman assistant basketball coach getting an opportunity to be a head coach in the NBA. Like, talk about the growth of society, the growth of major league sports, and then, you know, kind of the growth of the person himself, because you know, it really does take a village to raise a certain person or child, male or female, and they got to have that love and respect and support to make tough decisions like this, you know, and then to follow up with the charity afterwards. Like, that's just huge, and it raises awareness to teen suicide because of their likes or dislikes, or their fear of exposure or humiliation, you know. So for him to take it to another level, it just kind of says the character of the man versus you know, sexuality above the sexuality itself. So, you know, when you talk about high character people hey, he's along that line, you know. So good for him, and hey, good for the NFL.
Yeah, I agree on both of those sentiments. I go back to, I want to, it was early 2000s, maybe even late 90s. ESPN had a show, episodic show. I believe it was called Playmakers. And it was essentially, if you've ever seen the movie Any Given Sunday, it was that, but in a weekly episodic, you know, very, I mean, it showed you, you know, not maybe every NFL player's livelihood, but definitely check the boxes of kind of the things that NFL players go through from all different sorts of things. And one of the characters was he was in the closet and he was gay, and that was obviously his story arc. It was only one season. The NFL did not take too kindly to it, and essentially had the show canceled. But the character's story arc was essentially all about protecting that secret. Now, I can't imagine that. Once again, I know it is a TV show, it's a drama, but once again, Carl Nassib is not the first player prior to this that had to deal with protecting this secret while also playing at a world-class level at a very violent sport. So it's, I think for this individual, at the very least, it's freeing. But I think also from a personal side of things, and now a professional side of things, you can kind of, now maybe early on, it might be a little different. There's going to be a lot of talk, you know, early on, that first primetime game, he'll probably have a sit down, a lot more eyes on him, no doubt about it this year. But eventually it's going to kind of just be Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that he is gay because it's not going to matter, folks. When the whistle blows, it doesn't really matter. But for him, I think it's weight off his shoulders for now him to go out and play. And Coach Lupian, I think you hit the nail on the head as well for teens, young people, your old, any people who are struggling with something like this to kind of see this individual come out and do it in a very, I would say, of all the sports, probably the one sport that maybe is the most masculine, or however you would think about this, and to do that, I think it's great for the community, and it's great for obviously Pride Month, to get the eyes out there, and great for the NFL. I will say, I do wonder aloud, and I hope I'm not speaking this into existence. By and large, the public and generally large groups of people are stupid. They're when you have a group of 70 people in that locker room, I can't believe that all 70 players, people, personnel, whatever, are going to now treat him the same way. I really, really do hope that is the case. But I also, like I said, no, if you just grab a handful of 70 people, drop them in a room, you're going to find some people with hate in their heart. It's just an unfortunate situation. How you try to find a way to root those people out early and often, that's now, probably a goal. But at the same time, I do think it's a very small proportion. And I just truly hope that he goes on to have a great career, and he is a great defensive end because of what he does on the field, not what he did off. Incredibly brave and all that stuff. But I think for us football fans, it's now time to look at him as a football player and cheer him on or cheer against him too. That's another thing too. If you're a Charger fan, if you're a Bronco fan, hey, he's still the enemy. You could still give him that respect after the game, but you want to continue on to that. So good news there. Hopefully good positive stories continue to come out in that realm as well. Moving on.
And let me add one more thing. You talk about the other 70 people in the organization. Now it's up to Mark Davis, John Gruden, Mayock. It's up to the team leaders. It's up to Derek Carr and the old dog that's been around like Richie Incognito. It's up for these team captains to step up and make sure everybody else keeps their ridiculous asses in check and put them in check if that's what needs to happen. But I think in the Raider locker room, in the world of the Raider Nation, he is going to be just fine, because here's what we care about. We don't really care about your preference. Don't let anybody get around the edge, pal, and make sure that you know where the tight end is, and make sure you get to the quarterback. You do that. What you do after 5 and after that's on you, man.
Just win, baby. That's all it is, right? Just win. That's all you got to do. If you're a part of that, it is all good. So once again, good for them, good for everything, and continue, hopefully, good stories coming out of there. Good story coming out of New Orleans in terms of that offensive line getting some help. Ryan Ramczyk, 5 years, $96 million. Obviously, the Saints are going through quite a turnover, not just on the offensive line, but obviously directly behind the offensive line. This is going to help. Any quarterback will tell you life is a little easier when you got better big uglies up front. So, of course, we will start with you, Coach Lupian. Reaction to getting some girth up front.
It's a big storyline, because if anyone remembers, Ryan Ramczyk he became the pick that came from New England for Brandon Cooks. He became the second first-round pick of probably, if you look at stats-wise and on paper, this is probably like one of the most historic, impactful drafts of any team in the league. You got Ryan Lattimore, right, who was the first pick of their selections in the first round. Then you have Ryan Ramczyk. Then you got a safety in Marcus Williams, who they franchised this year. And the talk was, well, who do we give that extension to? Is it Ramczyk? Is it Williams? And now it's putting the spotlight on a guy like Marcus Lattimore, Lattimore, to earn his extension after this season. And then to top it off, the Saints have already shown the commitment in the 3rd round pick of that draft, which happened to be Alvin Kamara. So they're looking to, like I've been having a hard time this entire offseason knowing that Lattimore's in a contract year, Ramchek's in a contract year, Marcus Williams in a contract year. They've locked up Kamara. And for this draft to be what it was, it's kind of like, gosh, how can you lock up key pieces, yet you're penalized by a salary cap? I mean, on top of Anthony Anzalone was part of this draft, who was a starter at linebacker for a number of years before he left as a free agent this year. There's a cat that has been a very solid pro, Muhammad, out of the University of Miami, that's been on the Colts and racks up sacks on that defensive line. He came in as like their 7th round pick. So like for them to lock up Ryan Ramczyk, one, I don't think it's a surprise as much as this organization invests itself in O-line. Look at what the last couple of years, you had Eric McCoy and then you have Cesar Ruiz after a guy like Ramczyk, you know? So they've really addressed their need on both the offense and defensive lines, and they've shown and handsomely paid out the benefits. And then, like you said, the change behind the line, you know, it just gives whomever wins that quarterback competition a sense of comfort back there, slinging the rock. You look at a career like Jameis Winston, who's never had offensive line help, and he's gone, you know, from Tampa Bay. But yeah, as soon as he's gone, they start locking up offensive linemen for, you know, terrific Tom. So it just kind of shows a commitment to, one, the Saints' philosophy, building from the lines out, and then, you know, just making sure that quarterback, whoever it is that wins that QB1 position, is secure on that right side, because Teron Armstead, all-pro, Ryan Ramczyk, an all-pro, Cesar Ruiz, first-round draft pick, Eric McCoy, an all-pro at center, first-round draft pick. You know, they're really making these guys feel comfortable back there, looking downfield and being ready to throw that pill. So good for him, good for the Saints. Let's get Lattimore under contract, and let's see what Williams does after this franchise season, and continue to reward these guys for their performances. It's unfortunate, you know, we lost a guy who was also in this same draft to Cincinnati, because he's a cap casualty. What's his name? I already forgot him because he's not a Saint anymore, you know. But I know our buddy the Pope, Craig, is going to enjoy. And he was a 5th round pick at the defensive line position, and he's just excelled and been an all-pro last year. So it's unfortunate we have to lose talent like that, but I mean, it's rewarding knowing we're keeping talent like Ryan and Kamara and locking these guys up for their future. So,
yeah,
it's good news.
Definitely. Good news there in New Orleans. Like you said, now it's kind of just down to figure out who he will be protecting. Raider Jim, would you like to add anything there?
Well, as you know, my short-lived career as a football player, all the way through the 10th or 11th grade, I played a lot of offensive line, and so I watched a lot of offensive linemen growing up, and so I have my heart is very much in the offensive line, in the trenches when I watch football. And I think it's great to see this gentleman get recognized for the star that he is. On a joking side, I do feel like what they just did is they came in and they said, you won't believe it, we just bought the strongest, most bulletproof door for the driver's side of our car. What do you think? You don't have a driver.
We don't got a driver.
None of my business, but what's it protecting? So, sorry, I had to. I just had to.
Yeah,
But
it's true.
no, I mean, you know, build around. Why not? I mean, this is I think it's a great pick. It's a great play because when they do get it established, when they get that field leader established, you want that guy to know that they are looking out for his best interest. And I think it was a great move, and I think that's going to pay off dividends. Saints is a good organization. Let's face it, they're a good organization. They're in it for the team, they're in it for the players, they're in it for the fans. And everybody, don't start betting against them because Drew Brees retired. That's my real opinion there. They are going to be in the thick of it, and they just made one of the greatest moves a team could make.
Definitely, yeah.
You don't go 8-1 without your field general, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then go into a season, you know, without ambitions of winning the conference or making the playoffs. You know, there's a system in place, and rumor has it Sean Payton knows what he's doing, right?
Yeah, he's got it on lock, and that's, I think, one of the other things too is that's now, you know, you can call it this system quarterback or whatever you want to say, but it's Sean Payton. That's his. I mean, I can't even remember, you know, who was there before. He's obviously kind of the new face of the franchise, or at least over the last 10 years. It's what happens when you win a Super Bowl. And, you know, you kind of brought up the driver, or the you know, bulletproof driver's side door. It's like having a Subaru, right? It's very safe. So if your driver's a little wild, gets a little crazy, that's all right. You can roll it. You can break some stuff. They got airbags for all that. It's kind of what we're looking at there. But moving on to Raider Jim's side of the ball, a very interesting quote I saw this past week came from Davonte Adams. Now, honestly, Davonte Adams has had some really kind of, I guess, under the radar quotes this year. A lot of the talk in Green Bay has been about Aaron Rodgers. And will he be returning? Will he not be returning? We go back to draft day when Aaron Rodgers just refused to let anyone be the star of the show any other day than him. And he dropped that bomb that he wants out. And then, of course, I think 3 or 4 weeks later, Davonte Adams brought up, you know, hey, I'm from wherever. I forget. It might have been South Central or whatever. I signed a contract. I got to show up. I got to pay. I got to play. Definitely a little backhand shot at Aaron Rodgers. And I think there are a lot of people who kind of agree with them. And a situation now, obviously, Davonte Adams out of Fresno State, former teammate of one Derek Carr. Take a little tidbit of this quote from Davonte Adams. It would be a dream to play with him being Derek Carr. Then went on to say, but I am a Green Bay Packer. But, you know, this is a situation, I'm sure, if you're a Raider fan and a situation where, you know, maybe the most exciting wide receiver that has been brought in over the last couple years has been Nelson Aguilar. You might want to feel a little excited to get a guy like Davonte Adams. Very long shot, big time long shot. You really want to piss off Aaron Rodgers, trade away Davonte Adams. So I don't think that will happen, but still, it'd be very interesting to hear what Raider Jim's thoughts are on this quote, I should say.
You know, Davonte Adams has been making some very interesting, the word that was used online was cryptic, very cryptic tweets and messages out there. I think it's within the past 48 hours. His most recent has been something to the effect, who knows what the future really holds? You know, kind of a ... And I guess that is supposed to really stir up, oh, is he moving? Is he on his way out? And then the other side of me wonders, is this because Aaron Rodgers is getting too much of the Green Bay press and the NFL press, and it's kind of Davonte's way of, you know, jumping up, he's behind the tall guys and saying, don't forget I'm in the picture. Don't forget I'm in the picture. So it might be something like that. Of course, it would be wonderful to have a Davonte Adams. I'd have been happy to have the Sammy Watkins come over when he left Kansas City. I don't believe it will happen. I would like to see it. Of course, I'm sure, you know, Derek Carr would be ear to ear with a grin if that were to happen. I just think the odds on that are way, way, way high. And it will not be. You're probably going to see the same guys wearing the same uniforms in Green Bay that we have the last 2-3 seasons. On the Raider side, though, I will tell you, Josh Jacobs has had a couple good seasons. Has he had the best seasons? No. Do I think he's living up to the hype? Not 100% in my eyes or in my book as of yet. but kind of like they did when they brought Mariota in and had him backing up Derek Carr, and it proved to be one of the best things the Raiders did last season. What happens this year when Jacobs gets dinged, 2 or 3 games into it, or he can't finish an entire game? Well, there's 2 guys out there, Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley, both need a home. That would excite me more than having Davonte Adams right now. So that's I would love to see one of those guys get brought in, at least let them go through the preseason practices and see what happens. I see a hand raising. Yes, Mr. Luke, is that you?
Maybe you're looking at it wrong. Maybe it's Davonte Adams saying, let's ship this bum Rodgers to the Raiders and bring in my guy Derek Carr.
Oh,
that could be.
Wow. That's the conspiracy theory. Hold on, where's my foil hat? That's I like that. That's a very interesting way to look at it. I think you're right. We might have been looking at this a bit of the wrong way. That's very, very interesting, Coach Lupian.
They're from the Bay Area,
Yeah.
It's he's you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, although it was in the past week, it's within the past week. I think Carr made the remark, if the Raiders ship me out, or if somebody else wanted me, I might really consider just calling it a game. So
the talk with him over the last couple of years is whether he's built Gruden's trust. Has he built Gruden's trust? That gets frustrating to hear over the next couple of seasons. And like you just said, to his sentiments, hey, I'll be good if they send me out.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, Davonte Adams will be a free agent at the end of the year. So, hey, like you said, there are plenty of opportunities down the road for both of those. But I think for right now, although as incredible, I'm kind of rooting for that now, just so that we can clip that Coach Lupian Nostradamus bit, and we can share that with the world that Coach Lupian was on top of this early.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be a heck of a mix-up there in Green Bay. But
I know I broke the Tatis extension.
Yeah,
that was,
that is true. That was
on air.
That was on air, and yes, I unfortunately did have to fact check Coach Lupian.
Yeah,
just like if he were to drop that one, he would have to be fact checked almost immediately as well. But good stuff there. Moving on to a little game segment, whatever you want to call it, to fill a little bit of time. It's called Agree to Disagree. This is essentially a fancy way of saying buy or sell, or BS or truth, whatever you want to call it. We're going to put a statement down, and we're all going to give whether or not we agree or disagree with said statement. So we'll start first in the AFC with the Kansas City Chiefs, saying the Kansas City Chiefs are the best team in the AFC. Let's start Raider Jim. This is kind of your jurisdiction. What are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
Until further notice, they sure are. Yeah. I mean, they lost Sammy Watkins. They've got Edwards-Helaire. He has been working on receiving because they're going to change up the scheme a little bit, is what I'm reading, and using him more out of the backfield. You're not losing anything by putting the ball in that guy's hands, 3 or 4 yards or 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, let alone when you hand it to him and he can do what he has a great gift of being able to do. They still have Kelsey. They've got they have done very well at keeping a good, solid offensive line, and we talked about how important that is. Patrick Mahomes is going to be well protected and taken care of. So yeah, until further notice, they're the guys to beat. They're the top of the mountain. If somebody wants the title, all you got to do is climb to the top and take them out.
Exactly, Coach Lupian.
I would like to agree, but since we're playing this game, let me disagree. And say there's a couple of teams that I like, Buffalo being one of them, if they could show some growth after that playoff loss. 2, I really, really, really like what Tennessee's done in this offseason. Our last show was, does Julio Jones and Aaron Rodgers get traded? And I said, at this point, no. And then, a week later, Julio's a Titan. So that's a major move, and we've shown, or they've shown the rebirth of a Tannehill. Now you give Tannehill another weapon, and then what we've all seen what Derek Henry's been able to do, and that defense is always on the verge of being a lockdown defensive team. But I would like to agree with Raider Jim and say KC's the team because they haven't been dethroned yet. But for show's sake, let me just bring about those two teams as far as and Baltimore's not too far either. And
but I think if there's going to be a team that beats the Chiefs, it'll be New England.
Yeah, you know what?
Belichick's coming back with a vengeance, I think.
Yeah. I will agree with you right there. Nice.
Yeah, I talked about it in the last podcast. Very few things that could have gone worse for the NFL besides, obviously Brady winning another. That's already nauseating for most people. But now for Bill Belichick to now have to essentially go, okay, fine. Everybody's talking about how it was all Brady now. Belichick is going to have an answer for that. But at the same time, I will say I agree with this for a couple reasons, mainly kind of what Raider Jim said. Look, they're at the top. You got to knock them off. And the two main teams that you talked about now, obviously Tennessee has improved in, I think, one of the biggest ways possible. My biggest concern with Tennessee was what happens when they go down 14-0. What happens when they're down 17-3, 21-3? It's hard for them to score quickly. Now, I know Derek Henry can run people over, but generally run first offenses take a little bit of time to score. Now with Julio, it's not the case. Now, vice versa, does that kind of cut into Ryan Tannehill? I know game manager is a dirty word, but I felt like he was better when he was a game manager. Do those expectations change with Julio Jones there? But mainly I would say that both of those teams, both Tennessee and Buffalo, if you look at the last two AFC title games, it was Kansas City who took both of those teams out. So once again, now I know Julio Jones kind of changes things for Tennessee. Buffalo's mindset, they kind of got there and went toe-to-toe with them and just couldn't get it done. We'll see if that changes. I think one of the big question marks is going to be, can the other teams in the AFC West maybe beat up a little bit more on the Chiefs? Obviously, last year, the Raiders got the Chiefs' attention very early, looked great, and then the Chiefs kind of, pushed everyone aside when they needed to from there on out. Can one of those other teams maybe go out and maybe go 9-7, or I guess now 9-8 or 10-7 and push this team to where it's not December 3rd and the Chiefs have already locked up the division? That could be something, if they, have to play 17 or 16 games competitively, does that maybe cut into things? Because I think that's helped them throughout the last couple years going into the playoffs. Obviously, I know Mahomes' injury kind of cuts into that. But statement number 2, this is right in Raider Jim's wheelhouse, so we'll start with him. But the statement number 2, agree or disagree? John Gruden will be the Raiders head coach after this season.
Yes, and here we go. If Gus Bradley does his job that he was hired to do, and I believe Gus Bradley was the right move for the Raiders to make. Gus Bradley is the defensive coordinator that used to be with the Seahawks. He's the guy that pretty much was the architect of the Legion of Boom out there. And if he can bring some of that to Raider football, then it's going to be a different game, because the Raiders have been not a bad team on the offensive side the last 2 seasons. They have been an abysmal team on the defensive side of the ball too many seasons in a row. They were a fighter that if they could get out there and land some good punches in the first 3-4 rounds and take out an opponent, they stood a chance. Unfortunately, they always had to go the distance, and they weren't late round fighters. And so even if they got the lead with 90 seconds to go, that was not enough time, because the defense couldn't hold for 90 seconds and they would end up giving up, they'd give up a victory. So for Gruden to hold his job, he's going to need Gus Bradley to do his job. He's going to have to hope that the offensive line that they've put together is able to protect Carr. And then he has to have at least a very strong, they have to be the indisputable wild card going into the playoff scene. That's it. If they don't have at least that, I don't know. They're going to have to take a hard look at them, I would think. It can't be they're going to be the wild card team. They're going to be the last guys in as long as this happens and that happens. And if that doesn't happen on a Tuesday, and if wild card weekend is, a crescent moon, I don't want all these variables. Do your job. Beat the Chiefs. You beat them once last year. You could be the guys to do it, but now you've got a Charger team that might start believing their own press, and they've made their own good moves. They're going to be stronger than they've been. So it's going to be an interesting season for the AFC West. But to answer the question, Gruden will be the head coach provided he plays strong and gets them into the playoffs, and wouldn't hurt him to win a couple rounds in the playoffs as well.
Definitely. Coach Lupian.
I will trust my esteemed colleague, Raider Jim, in his opinion. But I know through week 1 through 17, there's going to be a moment when my esteemed colleague, Raider Jim, calls for Gruden's head. I just know it. I just know it. So, because he's locked in, what year is it of this 10-year contract that he's coaching under Raider Jim?
I think this is number 5 now.
Yeah.
It's time to prove it. It's time to prove it.
Absolutely. Again, and I go, you guys have heard it from me the last 3 seasons or whatever, especially when they sign you and re-announce you to the Raider Nation, and you stand in a bar and say, and I'm not talking about a rebuild, I'm talking about we're going now.
Yep.
I'd hate it if he was my train conductor. I'd still be standing on the platform waiting to get to my destination.
He would have given you a train whistle to play with.
That's true. Yeah.
I'm going to agree that he will be the Raiders head coach. And I would say it's more of kind of blind faith in what we just kind of talked about. It's year 5 on a 10-year guaranteed contract. Now, this is a team that has moved to Vegas. And in the spectrum of sports, Mark Davis is a poor rich dude. Let's be honest. He is not, he is. He's kind of like Spanos. He's rich, but compared to his buddies, he's poor. And he hasn't had a year yet, or at least the Raiders as an entity have not had a year yet to enjoy the income that will be the Vegas, Death Star or whatever. I think it's Allegiant Stadium, but I'm going to call it the Death Star until Disney comes after me. But it's a situation now where if they can get some of that revenue in, get some money in his pockets, then I think they're okay with eating the, 40, I think it's $10 million a year from here on out. So, you're looking at $40 million that you're dumping down the drain. Stan Kroenke, Steve Ballmer, the Yankees, Robert Kraft, those teams, 40 million, they can do that. Davis right now can't. The Raiders, I don't believe can. And outside of, something really bad happening in terms of a 2-15 season, something really bad like that, I think he keeps his job just for the sake of economics. Like I said, I the fact they missed last year, that's a tough part, because they might have got the, TV money, which is nothing to scoff at, no doubt about that. But the revenue, asses in the seats, beer sales, all that little stuff on that Sunday are a big reason why that team is in Vegas and no longer in Oakland. So moving on to number 3, this one I'll actually lead with because it's kind of in my wheelhouse. Selfishly put this in there. It is Carson Wentz will lead the Colts to the playoffs. And you know what? I'm going to maybe surprise a couple of people. I am going to agree with this. And I'll tell you a couple reasons why. I think we look back to last year, Indianapolis, if it wasn't for a couple questionable calls in the playoffs, it was against Buffalo. some notable fourth down calls early in the first half of that game. If maybe they play that a little differently, they might be playing the Colt or the Chiefs in the AFC title game. It would have been possibly Phillip Rivers in that situation. Obviously, Rivers is gone. The Colts have a really solid foundation around Carson Wentz now. I don't believe this is a situation where he has to worry, kind of look over his shoulder like he did in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts. And one of the biggest things for the Colts and what will aid in Carson Wentz's abilities is a run game. If you look at when Carson Wentz has struggled, whether it's been true or not, it's when he feels he has to do everything by himself. When there's no weapons offensively on wide receiver wise, or there's no running game whatsoever. That's when Carson Wentz struggles. You go back to his MVP season, he had some really good wide receivers, fantastic tight end, obviously, but mainly he was able to hand off to, Jay Ajayi, Corey Clement, LeGarrette Blount, guys like that. They shouldered the load. Carson Wentz didn't have to do everything. That's kind of the situation he is in with the Colts. Now, I don't think they win the division. Tennessee's definitely better, but I do expect the Colts to make the playoffs. And at the very least, if that happens, the Eagles get a first-round pick. So I'm happy about that. But Raider Jim, we'll go to you next. Carson Wentz make the playoffs with the Colts.
As you said, they got too close last year. Is he Phillip Rivers? No, but Phillip Rivers, let's be honest, Phillip Rivers was riding on a lot of, what do you want to say? He knew it was his last year and he was self-motivated and he was going to go out there and give his best. But the team rallied around him and definitely help them to have the successes they did. This one's going to be up to Reich. It's going to be up to Marcus Brady, the offensive coach, to really make sure that they get Wentz, they get his buy-in. And I think you're going to see buy-in from Carson Wentz. And they also, a lot of focus, Carson Wentz going to the playoffs. Like I said about Will Gruden, make it to, be the coach next year. I threw a lot of other names out there and things that have to happen on a team level. When it comes to Carson Wentz getting the Colts to the playoffs, I'll tell you what, they got Kwity Paye and a good defense out there. So yeah, he's going to have a lot of help in getting his self-confidence back and performing at the level that he is capable of performing at.
Definitely. Coach Lupian, what are your thoughts?
So I don't think I've ever appreciated or whatnot the talent and fighter Phillip Rivers was until that last playoff game.
Correct. Right.
Prior to that, I really didn't have much to say about or think about him other than, kind of like what the rest of the league knows about him, that he whines a lot to the referees and he's a trash talker and whatever. But then you throw in a guy like Carson Wentz who's just very undisciplined the last number of years in Philly. You reunite him with a Reich that he'll put him in his place. And let's just say what it is. He's a better talent right now in his career than Phillip Rivers is at the end of his career last year.
Right. Exactly.
So it only leads to the expectation that they get him to the playoffs. So I agree with that. But let's not forget, this is I don't want to sound too New Orleans but this is a team that has built itself up inside out with their line. Phillip Rivers, that was his best line he's ever had in a career, and to see what he did with that team and get them to the playoffs. Yeah. And this is a Carson Wentz he's been hit a lot and he's been shook, and knowing and having the confidence in this line that's currently present, offensive line that's currently present with that Colts team, and reunited with a guy like Frank Reich, who's put him in positions to be successful before, it only leads to a playoff berth. Now, if it doesn't happen, then you know what? That whole team has to be imploded. So,
yeah.
And you get your first round pick.
Yeah. Well, and that's the big thing. I believe it's as long as Carson Wentz plays 75% of the snaps, no matter what they do record-wise, it will be a first-round pick. If he only plays 70% or more, or I guess between 75 and 70%, then they would have to make the playoffs for that to be a first-round pick. But one of the main things, and I don't want anyone to misconstrue this or anything, but, you know, look, as fans, it's short for fanatic, right? So I'm going to be a little fanatical here for a moment. I kind of go back, and Carson Wentz, there was one big difference between last offseason to this offseason, and obviously I know it was COVID, but personally for Carson Wentz, look, he had a child. And any father will tell you, you know, that your life before versus your life after is a lot different. You're not able to kind of maybe go 18 hours a day focusing, things like that. Once again, congratulations to Carson. You know, it's great. He's a father and all that stuff. Yeah, but it cuts into that time. You're not able to fully devote. It sounds terrible. And once again, the old man yells at Lon, you know, what I want all my athletes to be have vasectomies, damn it. That's not the case. I just I question it because I will say there is another child coming on the way for the Wentzes. Congratulations once again. But you know, what does that mean? Once again, probably diving a little too deep and maybe making something out of nothing. But I would go back, and Carson Wentz had regressed since his MVP, or at least near MVP season, but last year was really rough. But to Coach Lupian's point, a lot of that had to do with the fact he was hit a lot. I don't think that's going to happen too much in Indy. That's a really good offensive line. Final one, we will stay in the AFC South, and it is the statement of Trevor Lawrence will win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Let's start with you, Raider Jim.
It's so early to tell. You know, it really is. You never know who's going to come out. He's definitely the front runner. As you know, you and I talk horse racing all the time. So if I was going to put odds on this, I'll give you 2-1 that, yeah, he probably will end up winning the award. Absolutely.
There you go. Yeah, I myself, I would say yes, just because, or agree, I should say, just because of the fact that he'll probably just get it by the sheer number of attempts, right? It's kind of the Peyton Manning situation. Peyton Manning's first year wasn't great. I think he set a record for the most interceptions thrown. I think he also set a record for most touchdowns thrown. But he was thrown in the fire straight away. I think Trevor Lawrence is probably right now far and away the starter, with all due respect to Uncle Rico 2.0 and Gardner Minshew. But I think most people expect Trevor Lawrence to start week 1. And I don't think outside of injury, there's anything that's going to get Trevor Lawrence benched. So therefore, I think he's going to probably throw for 3,500 yards, 35,000 yards, 40,000 yards, all that stuff. Oh, no, 4,000 yards. Excuse me. My math a little messed up. But, you know, he'll get to that. He'll lead the rookie ranks and all that stuff. But it'll be tough. It'll probably end with a lot of interceptions. And he'll take some lumps. I think other teams are going to try and maybe find other ways to get their rookies into it maybe later in the year. I know Bears fans are saying that Fields should start straight away, but, you know, Mitch Trubisky is going to try and say something about that. Even in New York, I don't think they really want to start Wilson straight away with the Jets. So plenty of situations there. I will say that those 3 wide receivers, keep an eye on them, because all 3 of those wide receivers are going to start straight away, kind of in the situation of the other quarterbacks that aren't going to do that. All 3 of these guys are, and at least in terms of Devontae Smith, he is stepping in as wide receiver 1, unless something crazy happens. But Coach Lupian, what are your thoughts? Trevor Lawrence, Offensive Rookie of the Year, agree or disagree?
I'm going to disagree. And here's why. I think there's a number of teams that are going to be able to put their rookies in a better position, like a Kyle Pitts, who they say is just a freak. And then putting him in Atlanta's offensive system could just rack up numbers. I actually really like a guy like Najee Harris. You know, the running game is what it is. It's died a lot. But for Pittsburgh, where they're a run-first team, it could put that kid in the mix to really be explosive and expose his talents for what it is. So I think Trevor Lawrence is he's a generational talent. I just don't think he has enough surrounding him to be successful as a team. But you got guys like Pitts who we knew Atlanta was always knocking on the edge of that door. And a guy like him could replace the numbers lost of a Julio Jones. And you got a guy like Najee Harris that could solidify an offense that needs some solidifying in a run-first offense with Pittsburgh. And those are just two, of the offensive guys. I think that a guy like Micah Parsons, the linebacker for Dallas Cowboys, could be a strong candidate for defensive rookie of the year. You'll never have a team out there or two rookies out there like the Saints had and have Kamara win offensive rookie of the year and Lattimore win defensive rookie of the year in the same year. It just won't happen. But to answer the question, I'm just going to say no, just because the mountain this kid will eventually get to has to climb year one with a rookie coach in Urban Meyer that who knows if his system translates to NFL, system. But I just think more than that, those two guys, Kyle Pitts and Harris, and possibly possibly a Waddle, are in better positions offensively to make waves.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I would say Chase, but I don't know what Burrow's going to do coming back from injury. And I would say the guy that you guys got, Davonte Smith, you don't even like your quarterback as is, so who knows if you could even get him the ball because they picked him a season too late, right, without a proven QB1 like Carson Wentz. So I just think there's other guys that are in better offensive positions to perform. And then, Raider Jim, he has to bring up the Patriots earlier in the show and Belichick. If Mac Jones is the guy on that team, it's going to be a ball control system, game management system where the numbers and the wins could result in
correct,
right in an award like that, where you could see double-digit touchdowns and maybe just up on the edge of single-digit interceptions, but yet they're going to go 12-3, and they're going to get a lot of TV time because they're going to be facing a Buffalo who's on the verge of splashing, and those two teams are going to go at it in the East, and there's just going to be a lot of East Coast bias, and Mac Jones is that rookie, you know what I mean? So
right,
it's an uphill battle for Trevor. Is he deserving? Who's the no? But I just think he has a much steeper mountain to climb than some of those other guys.
Definitely. I think that was great. You brought up Najee Harris. There are certain teams when they draft a certain position, you just kind of ears perk up. Mainly for me, it is the Steelers. When they draft a running back early or they draft a linebacker early, it's just kind of expected that no matter what you thought about the kid or what your preconceived notions were, once the Steelers go out and kind of, validate it, you just immediately go, okay, that's going to be a problem. And you've already seen plenty of highlights of Najee Harris out there looking very, very tough to stop. And that's a great point you bring up with, other teams putting their rookies in a situation that is a little more conducive to a better off. Because, I hate to say it, and I don't want to speak it into existence, but I think we all kind of expected Joe Burrow to probably be the rookie of the year, might have been if it wasn't for injury. And believe me, that offensive line in Jacksonville is not any better than the one up in Cincinnati. Once again, don't want to try to speak this into existence, but it is a reality for a lot of these guys that, look, when you're drafted number one overall, it means two things. The expectations are really high and your team is really bad. That's, mainly the big thing. So final thoughts, gentlemen. We will start with Raider Jim.
Yeah, going back to your number 3 question with Carson Wentz real quick, we might know early on because their game 3 this season is their first game on the road, and they'll be going to Tennessee. And then in week 8, they're going to have their second match, and that will be at home against Tennessee. I got to believe between those 2 games, you're going to have a good answer as to what does the playoff picture look like for the Colts. So that's it. And aside from that, other final thoughts is it was just great for the 3 of us to get back together, start talking like we know what we're talking about. And as I sent a text to a friend of mine earlier today about some other things, I says, and don't forget, we're 71 days away from kickoff.
Oh, I thought you sent the text like the boys are back in town and we just recorded a great show.
That's coming. Coach Lupian, final thoughts.
It's just good to be back on the air with you guys and talking some football. And as we get closer to the season, now that it's 71 days, right, Raider Jim?
That's it.
The shows will keep on rolling.
Amen. Yes, indeed. But yes, it was great to be back at it. It's going to be really good when we have some, kind of tangible things to talk about in terms of, maybe betting lines or actual things. But we're still, 71 days away from that, or at least, 50 plus days away from breaking down at least lines, things like that. But once again, I haven't looked at the line, but, I'm telling you right now, I have Atlanta -3 week 1 over Philadelphia. Buy the kicker. I believe it's still 3.5, or it was. Make sure you don't get beat up. But yeah, -3 Atlanta. They're going to cover. No big deal. Eagles are probably going to go under on their numbers as well. So with that, thank you all so much for listening to the NFL Weekly presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We will talk to you all very soon. Take care.
Peace out, everybody.